Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I wanted to try my hand at a blue-white control deck updated with Edge of Eternities, which did introduce a very powerful card for the archetype in Consult the Star Charts, which is a 2-mana cantrip or a 4-mana card advantage spell, as we can potentially kick it, and then instead of getting one card out of the top X, where X is the number of lands we control, we get to grab 2 of them instead. And of course, in a control deck where you actively want to be hitting your land drops turn after turn, the Consult the Star Charts are just going to keep getting better as the game progresses, and we can play it at instant speed as opposed to stock up, which is maybe a card we would play previously as a card draw effect, which can only be played at sorcery speed. And then, of course, as a control deck, we're going to have a few counter spells. No More Lies is perfect here as a 2-mana counter unless our opponent pays 3, exiling the spell in the process, which also has a relevant upside. And then 3 Steps Ahead, which is often cast as a 3-mana counter spell, but if we have more mana available, can also maybe draw and discard, or maybe even make a token that's a copy of an artifact or creature we control. So that can also come up, have a few tokens we can generate, and a few large creatures as well that can be used to close out the game. The Whale being one of them, can first adventure it to bounce an attacking creature back to the opponent's library, and then can still play the 6/6 with Flash and Ward 2 afterwards. Does enter tapped if we play it during the opponent's turn, but sometimes we can also main phase it if we need it back on defense. And then there's the River Regent, which is another flexible card, as we can use the instant Omen for 4 mana to draw 3 and discard. Unlike Adventures, this one does get shuffled back into our library, but if we draw it later, we can also maybe cast the 6-mana creature as a 6/7 flyer that gets to bounce 2 non-land permanents when it enters, so we do still have that flexibility. And then copying River Regent, especially with 3 steps, can also be quite backbreaking. Then we also have a bit of spot removal to take care of larger individual threats. Get Lost can destroy any creature, enchantment, or planeswalker, giving the opponent 2 map tokens in return, which we can also maybe blow up with our 2 copies of Ultima, which destroys all artifacts and creatures, in addition to ending the turn. So do make sure to play your land before casting it, since you're not going to get the chance otherwise. And Ultima, of course, the perfect answer to the various blue-white synthesizer artifact decks, as this can essentially blow up the opponent's entire board and often win the game on the spot. And then we've got a few more cheaper board wipes as well, with Split Up destroying either all tapped or untapped creatures, which can also be helped by Authority, making the opponent's creatures enter tapped and gain us a life each time. Very good against any haste threats as well. And then Day of Judgment, a classic at 4 mana, just destroying all creatures, no questions asked. And then rounding out the deck, we also have 2 copies of Seam Rip as another cheap answer. Can also maybe get rid of some cheaper artifacts or enchantments that we can't always hit with our other answers. And then another finisher is Elspeth Stormslayer, which can also maybe protect us by making a bunch of 1/1 soldier tokens, can also destroy an opposing creature with mana value 3 or greater when it enters, and then can also close out the game by giving our team a bunch of +1 counters and flying until our next turn. And then doubling all the tokens we produce also applies to Fountain Port, which is another very solid addition to the mana base, as we can make a bunch of fish tokens with it, draw some cards by sacking tokens, as well as maybe make some treasures. And the tokens from Restless Anchorage could also be amplified by Elspeth, also playing the full playset of this land, as it can turn into a 2/3 flyer, making a map token when it attacks. So this can also help close out games, or just a threat of activation representing a 2/3 flying blocker means the opponent may not attack, and then we can still spend our mana elsewhere at instant speed, drawing cards with a Regent or consulting the Star Charts instead. And then 2 copies of Demolition Field, also important if we're facing more controlling decks, as it can answer opposing creature lands or cards like Fountain Port, which may be a nuisance otherwise. And then plenty of basics as well, since we do want to be playing a pretty high land count. We've got 26 here, which is not unusual for a control deck. So yeah, that's our deck. Let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like a keeper. We can keep up No More Lies turn 2. I've got some cheap removals, some card draw. And I'll start with Anchorage, since I don't know what to do with the Surveil yet, since we don't know what we're up against. Looks like maybe the green landfall deck. So definitely want to keep up answers for an opposing Tifa or Mossborn Hydra. Could have also opted for tap land, Seam Rip the Lenor Elves to slow them down, but then if our opponent just goes land into a Tifa, we could be in trouble. Chocobo is acceptable, not one of the bigger threats. Can take a little bit of damage from it. Tifa, on the other hand, is a little scarier. So the whale also answers the landfall creatures quite well. As good as Get Lost is in the matchup, I just want to keep hitting my land drops. Keep up No More Lies for Mossborn Hydra specifically, since I can't seam rip it, and if we try to whale, they might have a hexproof trick. Chocobo's fine. So now we're basically digging for one of our board wipes. So I can maybe afford to stock up next turn. So our opponent at most can cast a 2-drop. So, yeah, seems reasonable to use the whale. They might have a trick to protect the Chocobo. Then we'll reconsider next turn if we want to seam rip or if we tap out for stock up. It looks like they might have the Snakeskin Veil here. I would be surprised if they didn't go for it, but no, opponent lets it slide. Alright, Anchorage is good, so now I'm just gonna pass again. Since they only have the one Chocobo pressuring us, so I don't need to tap out for stock up to find a sweeper, because if we miss, we could be in trouble if our opponent resolves another threat. Going Seam Rip, keep up No More Lies also would have been reasonable. Although we're getting to the point where our opponent could have cast a Tifa and still paid for a No More Lies. So Chocobo up to 4 power. Opponent may be deciding whether or not they want to deploy an extra threat, or if they want to go for Ordeal of Nylea. Yeah, they would be able to trigger it right away, since we don't have a way to really punish them. Get 2 more lands in play, so I feel like I should No More Lies before our opponent can just pay for No More Lies going forward. And then just the Chocobo attacking, so the Elves wants to make mana potentially. Found a split up, so that can answer their tapped creatures. This might be an okay turn for stock up, and then we may or may not seam rip the Chocobo as well. Alright, it's all lands. I'll grab Surveil Land and Verge. So first see what's on top. Regent I can keep. I'll just seam rip the Chocobo, see if that works. It does. So not sure what the Lenore Elves was representing. Maybe they were playing around a split up. So now between Whale and Regent we can close out the game pretty quickly. So I don't mind playing Regent, bounce their 2 creatures, and then copying the Regent with 3 steps could also be in our future. If they protect the Hydra with a hexproof trick, then it's still not going to necessarily win the game with a single attack starting as a 1/1. And now we're in a position where we can attack and then split up all untapped creatures as well. Yeah, that's probably a good starting point. Still have 3 steps available. And also can't forget about the Anchorage getting in for 2 in the air. So don't hit my spot. And our opponent agrees. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a reasonable hand. Don't have any counter spells or card draw, which we might need. Opponent on what looks to be the Cauldron combo deck. So, am I in a hurry to play Authority? Not really, but I would like No More Lies up on turn 2, so let's just Surveil for now. Keep the land. Eidetic Memory resolves. So for now we'll pass with no more lies. Opponent is splashing white as well, so it's possible this is an Oculus deck as well. Fear of missing out is a fine target for no more lies. Prevent them from getting an extra counter off memory. So I'll just play Authority and pass. Okay, maybe bounce the Mako if it gets too out of hand. And now a Winter Night Stories also would have been a fine target for no more lies. Now we're probably gonna bounce the Mako after it picks up more counters. We do see Abhorrent Oculus in graveyard as well. So they might be able to bring it back with a Helping Hand. So then I might have to Day of Judgment. But still seems worth it to save myself 6 damage. And it did appear that they had a Torch the Tower in hand as well. Alright, opponent did have the Helping Hand, unfortunately. So Oculus in play is a pretty big threat. So, yeah, Elspeth minusing on Oculus next turn still leaves it vulnerable to all the face-down cards they get to generate. So I could just Day of Judgment. The problem then is, if they bring Oculus back once again, I don't have a great answer. So I might just have to take the hit, end of turn consult with Kicker, and then we can find some more answers, so we're not just called to another Helping Hand. But we might also get got by a Spell Pierce, for instance. As our opponent now unlocked a bunch of blue mana. So take 7. Opponent's just going to pass with a bunch of mana up. Alright, definitely need lands. Do I just take 2 of them? No more lies. Is it going to be awkward to leverage? So yeah, I might go Anchorage, which I can play alongside Day of Judgment, and then Plains lets me cast a Regent. So I'm not just dead to Spell Pierce on Day of Judgment, but it would hurt. Yeah, that works. But we can expect Oculus to return. Call Surprise Witness, brings it back. At least the Authority is getting us some life back. Alright, let's just cast the Regent and hope for the best. Probably bouncing the face down card over memory. Happened to be another memory. So now we can maybe better protect Elspeth. If our opponent plays Oculus, we can minus. Although we do suspect them to have a Torch the Tower in hand, which would then be able to finish off Elspeth pretty easily. They have another Oculus in the graveyard as well. A Seam Rip could answer the memory, I suppose. But they have another one we know about already. Let's maybe Seam Rip and hit the face down card, which was a bounce off, so they did have a bounce spell. And then now we can Elspeth. And I'm just gonna make tokens. Play defense. Still need to find a better answer to the Oculus, but technically the Regent can block it. They could have double Torch the Tower to still deal with Elspeth. And I guess now with the Eidetic Memory, Oculus can get large enough. So then Regent is trumping, which is not pretty. So then going for a +1 counter last turn might have worked out better. Still seems worthwhile. Especially if we top deck a sweeper here. And get lost. Still useful. If I get lost to Oculus, gotta hope that the face down card isn't another Oculus. And then I can maybe get away with just making more tokens with Elspeth. There's even a world where we could consider attacking with Anchorage, although that also lines up poorly in the face of a Torsia Tower. We've got our Demolition Field for the opposing Anchorage. There's also the Whale to consider. So what if we get lost Oculus for starters? Maybe just main phase the Whale. Yeah, you know what, let's go Whale and then give the team +1 counters on flying. So then the Whale can maybe play defense for us too. Winter Night Stories harmonized. Could use a nice top deck here, like a Stock Up or another Consult. But Elspeth is keeping us in the game at least. Couple of Sacred Foundries in hand. Siren a 4/4. But no amazing attacks. Fear untaps itself. So, yeah, they will get an extra combat step, giving the Siren 3 more counters, so then I may as well just block and then trade with the Whale. Suppose I could have gone 3 counters on face down card, make it a 5/5, so a double block with the 2/2 soldiers would not have looked great. And a Mako. Alright, so this might be Anchorage attack. Make some more tokens. Can go exploring and deal with the opposing Anchorage, but probably not before I attack. Because I don't want to give them a mountain and have them destroy my Anchorage before I get a chance to attack here. Opponent takes a trade. So then first I would like to get a +1 counter on Anchorage if possible. Ultima, I'm probably gonna put in the graveyard here, could keep it on top since I'm gonna shuffle with Demolition Field anyway. But I don't really see myself wanting to draw Ultima anytime soon. Would much prefer a card draw effect. So now Anchorage is out of range from even a bargain Torsia Tower. So even if they have a mountain left, they wouldn't be able to take it out anymore. And can go exploring again. And definitely keep the Consults. And Elspeth will make some more tokens. Alright, that was a reasonable turn. Consults can try to find more interaction. The tokens are happy to chump. But they might be able to clear both. Yeah, the Authority also nerfs the Harmonize card somewhat, as they can't immediately tap their creatures. So we get to untap. Step 1, consult with Kicker. Alright, so we did find the Day of Judgment, and then 3 steps. Looks good as well. Am I in a position where I already need to cast the Day of Judgment? Probably. Do I attack first? It might be risky if they do have a counterspell for Day of Judgment. I don't expect them to, but if they did draw Spell Pierce, which they are playing, if this gets countered, I'm gonna need these tokens back potentially. Or I might want to minus on the Scholar. So I don't think the 3 damage missed is gonna matter all that much. So that works. And then now I can just make tokens. Opponent's getting back Oculus again, it seems. Now Elspeth has enough loyalty where we can minus on it right away. But yeah, I guess they'll still have another pretty large threat. They are running low on cards, 17 remain versus our 37, so they've been milling themselves a lot more and drawing more cards in general. Split Up was an amazing draw. Alright, so Split Up, destroy tapped creatures. Can counter back this time as well. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hands got some okay tools. Authority to slow down aggro, Consult to find other answers. Fabled Passage from our opponent, so it could be a Landfall deck, could be a multicolor deck. Demolition Fields is not the ideal land to draw, but I'm not going to decline it since we want lots of lands to kick our Consult. But eventually we'll need a second white source for Ultima. And now I might not be able to play Authority on turn 3 and still No More Lies. Alright, rest in peace. Don't mind saying that. So it looks to just be a blue-white control deck, but prepared for graveyard strategies. So I don't need to prioritize Authority right now. Consult I would much rather play with Kicker. And then Fountain Port we don't want to expose to an opposing Demolition Field. Our Demolition Field wants to hit the opponent's utility lands. So we're in for a long battle. So now that we drew the planes, I could play the Authority, just to throw it out there. Opponent's gonna Consult. I'm not gonna fight over an unkicked Consult with 3 lands in play. So, yeah, this is gonna be a long one. Beza could be worth countering, since otherwise I need to find a different answer later, which is probably gonna cost me more mana. And right now it's also drawing the opponent a card. Also would have, I guess, gained them life since we have Authority. Alright, so now could play Fountain Port, but probably just gonna kick a Consult instead of activating it. But it is an option. Opponent maybe missed a land drop. So they're somewhat likely to counter the Consult with whatever they have. Don't have to play into it, but at the same time, flushing out counterspells may not be a bad plan. Could technically top deck an Elspeth and then resolve it if they counter, but opponent just wanted to resolve their own River Regents to draw and discard. Probably don't need Seam Rip, but I'll take a Stock Up and a land. Alright, so do I need an untapped land this turn? If I want to Stock Up, still have 2 mana up. I guess I could Stock Up first. Do I have to discard 2 hand size this turn? 6, 7, 8, can play a land, so we're still good. Alright, 3 steps, and I'm gonna go with a Regent here. And then I can just play an Anchorage. Don't think the 2 mana is necessarily doing much for me, other than maybe representing another No More Lies. Ooh, okay, opponent is a mill deck instead. Fair enough. At least because of Rest in Peace, they're probably not gonna be exhausting a monument to mill me out completely. But yeah, Anomaly is a scary one. So only 23 cards remain. So now it's on us to maybe start applying a bit more pressure. Yeah, we also see Jadur, that can also mill half of our deck. Yeah. A control deck with a mill angle might be favored in the control mirror match. The card we really want to find is Elspeth, since that can close out the game a little sooner, but we can also expect them to have a bunch of get losts. So, can now consult with Kicker again. Finding Elspeth 3 steps. Or do I need a land? Probably need 3 steps more. Okay, so can't quite play Elspeth with 3 steps backup. So then I think we just pass. Nothing else I really need to do. Can discard an Ultima to hand size. Opponent's gonna consult with Kicker themselves. Could counter draw, but then I wouldn't be able to counter another Anomaly, which would mill me out. So I probably have to let that slide. Yeah, I was not expecting the Anomaly. Otherwise we might have wanted to keep up interaction for it. And of course with our opponent still at 20, that card's a lot more threatening than if you were up against aggro. Opponent says no to a ride, and good to know that they're playing that kind of interaction, which is less effective against an Elspeth, but more effective against a Regent. So end of turn can activate Fountain Port, make a fish. And yeah, it might be time for Elspeth, with 3 steps available. I guess I can keep Fountain Port untapped in case I need to sack the token to draw. But if they counter, I don't know if I can counter back. Luckily they didn't. But they might have a get lost to destroy our Planeswalker. Because yeah, if I fight over removal on Elspeth, then we just lose to Anomaly. There's the get lost. So that happens. And a flanker, more graveyard hate as well. So we're gonna have to win this game, keeping up 3 steps at all times. Ultima would also destroy our artifacts. Yeah, I guess that resolves. I'm just gonna draw. Doesn't matter if we sack a creature or a map, since both will get destroyed here. Alright, back up Elspeth is convenience. And then once again, leave up Fountain Ports. They'll seem like they have another get lost in hand though.
I welcome all allies.
Yeah. If they run it back on Ultima this time, I might counter. They don't, so then sack a map to draw is probably okay. Alright, no lanes. Could be an issue. So what if I start by attacking? Maybe I want to explore. Hit our lane for a turn. Hit for 2, and then end of turn I could try a whale. Don't really care about Seam Rip on Rest in Peace. And I might need the mana elsewhere. So, what do we get rid of? Probably Ultima. Do we think they're running Monument alongside Rest in Peace? I mean, it could be the case. It's still a good mill engine, milling 2 cards per turn. So then I might want to keep Ultima around a bit longer, although Seamrip can also answer it cheaply. So maybe we just get rid of the sweepers and keep the cheaper cards. End of turn, Flash in the Whale. Can still No More Lies. Opponent is gonna pick a fight here. Pay the ward. No More Lies. Probably not worth playing now. So that happens. Okay, so I can attack for 2. Do we send an Anchorage now? That's also an option. Or I can cast the Regent, even if there's not much to bounce. Because yeah, the plan would be to then copy the Regent at some point as well. Which I could technically do this turn cycle if I don't counter with 3 steps. Yeah, this might be okay. Although this risky for opponents is sitting on Anomaly plus Counterspell. Because I wouldn't be able to 3 steps with No More Lies backup. So maybe I should be a little bit more patient. Build up a few more mana sources. And for now I can still Fountain Port, make a fish. Should have maybe considered attacking with Anchorage. If I do, I still have 2 counter spells up, so that seems reasonable. Make sure I have enough blue mana. They will get Lost Anchorage. Could float a mana, but I don't think I'm gonna end up using it. Because they were already in the Declare Attacker step, so I can't explore with the maps until my second main phase. So I'll just pass. Opponent now consults with Kicker. That seems worth fighting over. Could also go double No More Lies. Opponent pays, No More Lies back. If our opponent then No More Lies back, I guess they get to resolve the consult, but they'll be tapped out for a turn. That works. Could also get Lost My Own Authority just to get more map tokens, I suppose. But yeah, we're not necessarily in a hurry. So 11 cards remain. Opponent's about to be at 11 life, so that could still mill me with their Anomaly, which they could still easily have in hand here. Could go exploring still, or we could set up the play we mentioned with Regent, planning to copy with 3 steps, which can maybe end the game a little bit faster. Yeah, I think it's time to put the pedal to the metal here. So Regent is 6 mana, still leaves 3 steps up. But the problem is, if they Anomaly and have their own 3 steps, we just lose. So I would really like to get them a little bit lower so that I don't just lose to that combination. So then I can maybe go exploring to get a few more counters. I regret playing my land out first now, and we drew 2 lands. Not really what we wanted, but sure. Alright. Jidur would mill half of my deck. So, rounded down, that's 4 cards, so 5 cards remain. I think I can let that slide. So we know Day of Judgment is coming up, opponent plays a Jidur out. Make another token. Alright, so step 1 attack. That's not gonna change. But now Anomaly would still be lethal with our opponent at 7 with 4 cards remaining. But if I go for Regent now, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, still don't quite have double 3 steps up since we also lost an Anchorage. So I think this turn we just play Anchorage and pass. Opponent tries Anomaly. So I definitely need to counter that one. Counter draw seems unnecessarily risky here with only 4 cards left. But I could counter and make a token and then still have a 3 steps left. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand, and our opponent concedes. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand, although it's missing a bit of card draw and a bit of oomph in general. But it's good against a low to the ground aggro deck. So we'll start with Anchorage, wait on Archive until we have a bit more info. Seems to be a common play pattern in this deck. Alright, we know we're up against a wide life gain deck. So can wait on Seam Rip, and we know we want to find sweepers. For now, play Authority. And 3 steps, not a priority. Countering 1 for 1 when they have a bunch of cheap 1-drops is not really where we want to be. Does give me a draw and discard on turn 3 as well. So it might be okay given my hand. Alright, opponent is black-white, so not the mono-white version. And black does give them access to Deep Cavern Bat, which is pretty good here. Can maybe take the Seam Rip, which can cheaply answer the bat. But finding sweepers is still definitely where we want to be. Opponent took the Get Lost instead. So I'm okay not casting Seam Rip just yet and just keeping up 3 steps. And I guess I could play Demolition Field, although I doubt I'll need to activate it right away. Anchorage eventually also gives us a flying blocker. Alright, Halia Warped. Certainly worth countering, because they would draw a card off of it right now, and then later they can still cast it. Now Sanctifier. So if we can draw one of our sweepers now, that would be great. Split Up or Day of Judgment. Opponent gets to scry a bunch. Goes bottom and then top, and we drew Elspeth. Can eventually be a solid win condition, but not great on this board. So this seems like a River Region turn, maybe threatening to block with Anchorage, although depending on what removal they're running, that may be a bad idea. Another Sanctifier. Do they have a payoff for all this life gain? They do, with a Starscape Cleric. So that's gonna hurt, but nothing I can do about it. But they don't have a good attack because of the Anchorage, which I'm willing to activate here if they attack. But if they don't attack, we get to use the Regent at least. Alright, so Anchorage saving us a lot of damage. And we found Day of Judgment, that's perfect. So Day of Judgment, play Archive. Probably don't need Seam Rip if we're getting our Get Lost back. Now our opponent could still be a Raise the Past deck as well. So we have to be a little careful, but for now I don't see a better option available. So they have one turn where they can top deck, Raise the Past and cast it. Starting next turn we can counter it. So let's say they do Raise the Past. If we're not just dead on the spot, opponent gets to Deep Cavern Bat, take a card. Then I probably just need to top deck another sweeper as opposed to a 3 steps. Alright, they did not draw Erase the Past, and that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand seems functional. We're going to be consulting a bunch early on. Up against green landfall. Alright, so we know what we're looking for. Answers for creatures. Demolition Field's definitely not a priority, even though we do need to hit our land drops. Yeah, it's probably good enough for now. So, can our opponent play an early Tifa? Don't have an immediate answer. It's just going to be a fetch land. Sack Escape Tunnel. Not sure why we're floating mana. Alright. So we'll pass with Consult and No More Lies. And a Traveling Chocobo. Yeah, that's probably worth countering, even though I'm sure they've got more scary 3-drops in hand. Alright, the whale gives us some creature interaction at least. Could have main phase consulted, maybe still found a 1-mana play like Authority or Seam Rip. Now it's going to be an ordeal. Yeah, that's gonna happen. But I can use the whale perhaps to bounce the Chocobo before the ordeal goes off. If they can protect it, so we might be in trouble. Alright, that works. So no ordeal trigger. And get to untap. And this is kicked consult. Can always consult and try and find a 2-mana answer. But we'll let that one slide. Spring Bloom's okay. So playing an Elspeth on this board is pretty decent. Just making some chum blocking 1/1s can stabilize us. So we'll look for an untapped land, which we did not find. Authority, not amazing in this matchup. So it's probably 3 steps and a Regent. And Root Authority anyways. So can start with Archive. Another Archive. I could keep. It's not a priority. So what's my sequence this turn? Maybe just Authority, keep up 3 steps. And then next turn Elspeth. Although I won't have the option of playing Regent since we're drawing a tap land. I guess if we don't need to 3 steps, I can consult with Kicker, which is maybe better than playing Authority here. So I'll keep the Archive on top and pass. A Traveling Chocobo. So now we're maybe at a point where we just let it resolve and look for a sweeper. Have the mana to cast an Ultima. But it's going to Bushwhack to find a land. Also shuffles to maybe still play something off the top with a Traveling Chocobo. And they did not, so their next draw is going to be a creature. That's not a bird. So we're taking 5. That's okay. Did not find a sweeper. Seam Rip is an okay answer for now. And then probably go for Archive over Anchorage. Alright, there's our Day of Judgment, so that's what we were looking for. That works. Surveil. Split up is fine. Play Authority. And at 10 life we're now in control of the game, I think. Mossborn Hydra, we can try and answer with Elspeth, or we can just Seam Rip if we want to play it extra safe in case they can give it a hexproof. Still have 3 steps available. Spring Bloom's fine. I don't think I'm in a hurry to consult. Alright, so this is probably a fine window for Elspeth. Make some tokens. And I'm fine to consult now, since we have plenty of other places to spend our mana. Do we need an untapped land? Not particularly. Can go for maybe a split up. Elspeth keeps plussing. Now Fountain Port can also double its tokens. So I'm happy to pass a turn. Can always draw a discard with the Regents. Tifa we can Seam Rip. And can also flash in the Whale if we want to apply more pressure, which seems fine. So let me start with Seam Rip in case they protect Tifa. I might need to split up as well. That works. And then we might be at a point where we can just zero Elspeth a bunch to get the game over with. Might want to activate Fountain Port first as well. Make a fish. Add counters. And smash. Alright, so we get to see this blue-white control deck in action, taking on a variety of archetypes and coming out on top. Definitely an archetype with a lot of possible options that you can include, lots of fine-tuning that can be done, but the core of the blue-white counter spells and sweepers seems like a solid foundation for a controlling strategy in the current standard metagame. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.